Hey folks, welcome back. This is going to be a quick rundown of how gearing is going to work in 10.1, both from a crafted side and from a general Mythic Plus upgrade variety perspective. Because for those of you that do or maybe don't know, Valor is going away. Blizzard are completely rejigging how the upgrade system works for gearing. So I'm hoping to get this video out that's going to help you guys just so you know what to expect when we go into the new patch, which is now only a couple of weeks away. So with that, let's get this show on the road. So we're going to start with the crafting side of things. And one thing that you're going to have to bear in mind is the fact that we are going to get loot drops now. So you have what's known as Shadow Flame crests. You have whelplings. You then have worms, and then finally you have aspects, which are the tiers going up. We also have a blue item that's known as a flight stone. So the combinations of these, which we'll get to when we get to the proper upgrade side of things and discuss Mythic Plus gearing rather than crafting gear, we'll discuss how we get these flight stones and the whelplings, Shadowflame crested, worms, or aspects, respectively. Now, the reason I'm showing you my enchanter on the PTR is because for crafting gear, enchanters are able to create the enchanted equivalent, which is basically the upgraded version of the concentrated focus and the primal concentrated focus that we have been using so far to up the item level of gear. As you can see, you've got the Titan Training Matrix 5, which is from 382 to 395 gear. So this will be your kind of catch up for wanting to create gear for any alts that you're leveling, just so you've got a base level of 395, which will be nice. But then going into the enchanted whelplings for Shadowflame Crest, this is going to be from 395 to 408. Then you'll have from 424 to 437. So this is going to be kind of your heroic tier that you'll be looking at. And then finally you have your enchanted aspects Shadowflame Crest, which is a 434 to 447, sorry, with that 447 being the cap out for crafting gear. Essentially this season's 418. And in terms of high-end mythic gear, the only exceptions to getting higher gear from a raiding scene will be through the end bosses, which we'll again discuss when we get there. So I can already hear you asking, how do we use these enchanted aspects of Shadowflame, and what are the UI changes to the crafting that we've been hearing on about? So with that, we're going to quickly look over to my other warlock, my tailor, and we're going to see how these get implemented into gear and how the crafting side things change. So we're now on the other warlock. We are on the tailor. Now, there's going to be a few new recipes to discover, like the undulating spore cloak, for instance, from the new zone, and there's also going to be the obsidian combatants gear, which again, level 70, 379 catch-up gear, but also early PvP gear. So this is going to be able to get you if you want to go into PvP side of things. And remember, for those that are a little bit more interested in long-term content, I will also be covering PvP in Season 2. So do bear that in mind. But back to the crafting and the gear. So we're going to pick a random piece of gear. We'll stick with the Azure Weave set, and we'll go with the Azure Weave robe. Now, the sparks, there's still sparks of ingenuity, but there's also going to be the spark of Shadowflame. We'll discuss this a little bit more when we get onto the looting side of things, but there's still sparks, essentially. But in terms of optional reagents, you can see here that you've got your enchanted worms and your enchanted aspects Shadowflame crests, which allows you to craft from 424 all the way up to 447. So these will obviously be priority pieces, but these are how you can then make use of enchanters. So enchanters, get ready. You're going to have a lot of work orders when you get the recipes for people to convert their flight stones and their crests that they've looted into things for craftable gear. So do bear that in mind. Now, if we have a quick look at one of the vibrant Wildercloth pieces, we have a couple of additional embellishments that are being added. So we have the medical wrap kit. This just improves bandages, a bit more flavorful. I don't really see that it's going to get any use. You have the reserve parachute. Again, this might be something that you have on your backs, which just reduces for open world, where you reduce your falling speed, which might be quite good if you're playing around in Zara Cavern, because remember, that is a new zone where there is dragon riding. There may be threats. We don't know. But you also have the, where is it? There we are. Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch. Dealing damage can also inflict a stacking Shadow Flame damage debuff on the target. We don't know how much damage it does as of yet. That's still subject to tuning, but we do have a couple more embellishments to play with. So, hopefully that has kind of given you a bit of an emphasis on the crafting side of things and what to expect, and how enchanting is going to be something that you're going to be interacting with a lot. So I suggest you make friends with an enchanter now, if you're not planning on playing a class that is already enchanting to some degree, because you'll be wanting to make the enchanted crests so that people can obviously get their key gear up. Now, we will discuss the looting side of things now. So let's get over onto the texty documents and discuss what it all means. So we'll be going over the website article for this. Link will be in the description below. Now, there's a lot of blue posts that are going to culminate into this summary element. We'll go through the blue posts and expand on pieces, but we'll just talk about this summary to keep this video condensed. So, in summary, the system will be available to all open world, raid and Mythic Plus gear, won't work on PvP gear, and very top end items. By top end items, we're talking about things that drop from like the final Mythic Plus raids or final Mythic bosses. They drop at about 450 in terms of item level, and it will not work on crafted gear, but that's fine because we've already discussed the crafting system itself and how that varies. So there's going to be two forms of currency, Flightstones and Crests. Again, we've already discussed this. And they'll come in the 4 different varieties: whelplings, drakes, worms, aspects. Now, those will have a cap of 10 per week. So there is a weekly cap on the number of crests you can attain, 10 of each kind. This is a key bit of information here. But don't worry, don't stress, because this cap also increases over time on a weekly basis if you don't reach it in the first week. So this is a thing for alts, like extra characters. If you're like me and now have 2 warlocks or 2 of a class because you're worried about which character is going to loot better, you don't have to worry if you end up focusing so much time on one of them, which is good, because there's this other thing as well that we need to bear in mind, and we'll expand upon it as well. Now, they're adding in the ability to have discounts, account-wide discounts. So when you upgrade a piece of gear, you'll have to pay a crest based on the item level that you're trying to upgrade to. That's, to be expected. But there's a massive discount in the upgrade costs if any character on your account has a higher item level in that slot. Second higher in the case of rings, trinkets, and one-handers. And this comprises of a 50% reduction in the amount of Flightstones needed. Now, we'll get onto that bit in a second and just expand upon this, because this discount element of the Flightstones and Crests is huge, especially if you are playing alts or looking to play multiple characters within Season 2. Now, Keystone Master and Keystone Hero will still exist, but they're not tied to Mythic Plus upgrades anymore. This means the gear is going to be freely upgradable, as long as you have the crests and the Flightstones for it. Again, this is huge, and depending on the amount of time that you can spend playing, is going to result in some huge gains early on, especially in terms of things like crafting. Because you're looking with a cap of 10 of the aspect crests per week, that is 2 maximum level crafted items, because each enchanted Shadowflame crest requires 4 of the base drops, which means that you can, week 1 of Season 2's release, immediately go up to a full 447 crafted piece of gear, which in the case of like these Yearweave, the Lariat, the rings, huge gains. We'll have to see how people do that, because I'm sure there'll be some maths behind it. But again, if you're lucky with a drop and you get like an Iridius fragment day one, then that might be your focus. Who knows, especially if you're playing a Demonology Warlock. Now, again, this norm-sized version element of the Blue Post is just, again, another Blue Post summary. Essentially, it's a bite-sized condensed format. They talk about the details and how things like flight stones are uncapped, so you'll get them anything from the game. So if you're running low and want more, you can always just continue playing the game. You'll be limited on how many you can hold, though the holding cap is relatively high at roughly 5 times the amount of the most expensive upgrade. This means that you'll be able to spend them freely and earn them and not really consider them much of a currency. You will cap out on them, but again, there's going to be a point at which you're constantly going to be using these or converting them into something else. So that is the option. Again, the Shadowflame crests and the detail there, and kind of the heroic raid gear uses the Worm Shadowflame crest and upgrade to mythic raid level using an Aspects Shadowflame crest, and similar to those levels of content where you'll find the most Shadowflame crests. So if you're running mythic raid, you're going to find your Aspect Shadowflame crests more. If you're running normal or heroic, you'll get the Whelplings or the Drakes or the Worms, or, you know, the difficulty allied to that gear set, which is nice, with the options for Whelpling and Drakes being non-instant or outdoor gameplay. So that'll be out-of-world catch-up gear type crests. Now, expanding on the redundant things are redundantly redundant. I don't know why they titled it this, but this is essentially your reduction in upgrading costs when gear isn't the same item level. This is what's going to bring your characters up to speed. There's an example that they give you with Vindicator Boros, upgrading his new two-handed mace because he likes the look of it, but it's 408, and he already has a two-handed sword that is 415. Upgrading his new mace from 408 to 415 will cost him half the usual flight stones and no Shadowflame crests. So you won't have to spend crests unless you're actually upgrading a piece of gear. So we're starting to get into that realm of, because this is account-wide, that your best geared character is going to allow all your other characters to catch up extremely quickly. All you're going to need to do is sink a little bit of time in, and not necessarily the time and resources that we're used to in the past. Now, expanding on the fact that rings, trinkets, and one-handed weapons are slightly different. You get 2 slots. So the way that they're doing this, at least for this, they may change it in the future. If this doesn't work, they might go with an average item level or something like that. Will track your second highest item to determine your discount on upgrades. So if you have a massive disparity between your first weapon and your second weapon, or your first ring, second ring, trinket, then it's going to go for the lower one, which means that as your main, or that particular character, you're going to have a vested interest, if you plan on playing others, of getting those trinkets, rings, and weapons up, which means that they may become, say you're a rogue, for instance, and you've got a disparity between your main hand and your offhand weapon, then your offhand becomes a priority to level quickly, especially if you're going to be looking at maybe running for the Baal Scourge fist weapon from Underrot, because remember, Underrot is returning, so agility wielders, we're going to be seeing you a lot. But what that does mean is it also allows, because if you remember the flight stones, which is this bit, half the usual flight stones, and it won't cost any Shadowflame crests, if you get a one-handed weapon, really high item level, because you've run your weekly and you've got that, great. Then you can run as many low-end ones as you like to get your flight stones to get it back up to speed. Potentially. It depends on how this works in relation to your two-handed, one-handed situation and what the disparity between the two is. Obviously, because two-handed weapons are their own slot, that's the full discount, but you may or may not have a better or worse one-hander. It gets a little bit messy, which is why I think that they may change this particular part. Track your second highest item to determine your discount on upgrades, because it'll be very, very hard to track. But based on how easily it's going to be to acquire flight stones and crests, especially as as time goes on, upgrading these won't be a problem. So upgrades, how many exactly, and where are we looking? So this is the chart that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit more. Hopefully you guys can still see. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit this here, and you can see a whole wall of text. Now, actually, what we'll do is we'll break this down. We'll zoom back in, and we'll just scroll down. So we're going to start with the Explorer through to 8. So Explorer gear is your basic level stuff. This is going to be, congratulations, you've hit cap. This is the Season 2 item level increase. Now you can see here that there are overlaps. So from Explorer 1 through to 4, there's nothing else that you can upgrade this with. However, it gets you from 376 to 385 item level. Now, there's no Shadowflame crest cost for these, and it's just immediately your flight stones. So this part of gearing is going to be really, really easy and really, really quick. Now, Explorer gear actually goes all the way up to 398. However, what you'll find is by going to 398, we're also in the rank of Adventurer 1 through to 4. And what Blizzard are basically doing is by incrementally adding these elements, you're going to end up with overlaps. So you're going to have Explorer that sits here, base level, and then you're going to have Adventurer that sits on top as a brick and creates a step. So you're going to end up with steps with portions where you can go higher if you want, or progress further along the gear level with that same gear, just by changing what you invest into it. And again, we end up going to, so Adventurer 4 out of 8 is equal to Explorer 8 out of 8. Then we start touching on the Veteran to Adventurer gear, with Veteran 1 through to 4 taking the ranks of Adventurer 5, 6, 7, and 8, and these require one well-playing Shadowflame crest, taking you to 402 through to 411. Then you have Champion 1 through to 4, matching Veteran 5 through to 8, taking you to 415 all the way to 424, and these require a Drake's Shadowflame crest. You can see where we're going here. Hero 1 through to 4. Now, Hero is unique because Hero is essentially the mythic level and is going to be taking the top end upgrades, essentially. You're still going to be using the Worm Shadowflames crests, which will drop from heroic difficulty gear, until you get to the final 5 out of 5 for Hero. Because unlike the other ranks, Hero only has 5 ranks rather than 8. Now, Champion, which, if we remember, starts at 415 item level, will progress all the way up to 437. So Champion is probably going to be the efficient point where you're looking for gear early on and what you're going to be pushing. Because if you get a piece, remember this is 8 upgrades and 8 Drake's Shadowflame crests. This means if there's a particular piece of gear that you're going to be looking at, it is going to take all of your Drake's Shadowflame crests, but it does mean that if you're going to get 10, 10, 10 of each, you can fully maximize these out based on what item levels you're after for that week. So if you come in for 415, once we work out which difficulties will drop them from a Mythic Plus setting, you can then get a trinket, rings at this level, and then you can upgrade priority items prior to raid, and then leave your worms and your aspects for other bits and pieces. Because you'll be able to do 2 items from raid, or 2 items from Mythic Plus that you'd be able to upgrade to 437, to then have your aspects of Shadowflame crests put out as either Hero 5 out of 5 or your crafted gear. Now, from a gearing perspective, because the one aspect Shadowflame Crest is your 441, which is base mythic, with 444, 447, and 450 relative being the wing. With, well, 444 is the end of wing bosses from Mythic Raid, because remember, they've changed the system, so you've got the base level, 441, you've then got end of wing, which is 447, and then you've got the final raid boss that is or the last two bosses, sorry, that are 447, with the 450 loot being the ultra rare, it's the big dog loot, which is why you don't have an upgrade system for these last three. Hence, Hero being 5/5. Now, what this means in terms of currency week 1, you will be able to max out both embellished piece of gear, because that brings us to 8 aspects Shadowflame Crests used for enchanted purposes, but then allows for 2 more to use that week. So we'll be bringing a video to a close here. I think I had to cut it a little bit short at the end there, covering the fact that we'll obviously have 2 aspects remaining to be used on improving gear that drops and things like that, or we can save that for crafted items. But I realized that we were starting to get on for a bit, and originally we obviously wanted to keep this video short. So hopefully this has kind of covered gearing and you understand how it's going to work. If you've got any questions, queries, or just general comments, please do put them below and let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, please do hit that subscribe button. It'd massively help me out. And I will see you all in the next video or on stream as well. So don't forget, there is my Twitch as well. I'll put a link into the description for that as well. And I'll see you gameside. Take it later and have a good one.